Well, authorities in Minnesota now have a court order to search Prince's home, known as Paisley Park. They also recently won a court order to keep the findings secret, according to documents released yesterday. Police cited intense media scrutiny surrounding Prince's death as a reason for the secrecy. Authorities also found prescription opioid medication on Prince, that according to several published reports. They're looking into whether a doctor was prescribing him those drugs. Prince was found unresponsive in an elevator at his home last week. We told you about it last Friday here on Newsmax Now. He was pronounced dead in less than 20 minutes after the ambulance arrived. Prince was 57 years old. Meanwhile, Congress and the White House are now focusing their attention on the prescription painkiller epidemic. President Obama recently announced new regulations to improve treatment and insurance coverage for opioid addiction. Last month, the Senate passed a Comprehensive Addiction and Recovery Act with strong bipartisan support. The bill would have allowed the Justice Department to award money to states and nonprofit groups to help strengthen prescription drug monitoring while improving treatment and expanding education. So far, it's stalled out in the House. Hearings are scheduled to take place in just a few weeks.
And for more on this, we want to welcome in Newsmax health editor Nick Tate. Nick, always a pleasure to have you. Before we start talking about opioids, I can't even say it.
Opioids.
Thank you.
You got it.
Can't even say it. You were commenting about the last segment that we just said. We were talking about President Ronald Reagan.
The new Reagan movie or not. There was a study that came out that really looked at were there changes in Reagan's thinking and the president's speaking patterns, and there were some changes in his second term in his speech patterns. Now, they didn't conclude that he had signs of early Alzheimer's. There was no evidence that while he was in office there were issues with his mental cognitive function, but there were subtle changes in his speeches. By analyzing the way that he spoke, he used less descriptive terms. He used more simple language that may have been an indication that there were signs that something was happening, and it could be that the Reagan legacy, which is extraordinary, this could add to it. And what the researcher suggested is that may give us, further research may give us an earlier understanding of what happens in kind of a pre-Alzheimer's patient that could lead to speeding up treatments and might be helpful.
And I know this is something that's very dear to you because your own father passed away from that.
Yes, he did. And most families who have this experience we look back and we say, well, when did it start? When were the signs? And I think everyone does that. And the main point is, certainly there were things that were funny. And as I have an aunt who I lost an uncle to Alzheimer's, and she said, if you don't laugh, you cry, but you don't want the world laughing at somebody that you love.
It's not
That's a family thing. That's right.
Exactly.
All right, let's talk a bit more about Prince. When we had you on the show last Friday, we were kind of going in this direction. We didn't know if it was going to be opioids or not, but the rumors were out there. Now it appears, according to several reports, they've talked to police. It looks like Prince had some opioids on him. Now, Prince, a Jehovah's Witness, had made a big deal about the fact that he did not indulge in this type of behavior. But I think this just goes to show you how addicting these pain prescriptions pills can be.
No question. Increasingly, it's looking like these narcotic painkillers were at least a contributing factor to his death, with law enforcement officials acknowledging that in the days before his death, doctors were prescribing Percocet for this hip problem. Prince was famously well known for being a vegan. And very religious, and he did not engage in the club drugs and the recreational drugs, and he lived a very clean life. But this is the way that addiction with prescription legal painkillers can creep up on folks. You live with pain. 200,000 people a year in this country die from legal and illegal drug overdoses, and in this country, 90%. We consume 90% of the painkillers that are produced throughout the world. 9 of 10 are taken here, and it's an enormous epidemic that we need to get our hands around. Bipartisan support for this legislation indicates that everyone on all sides agrees we need to do something, and this could be also part of Prince's legacy. We'll see.
And anybody in your family is prescribed to these, sometimes it's necessary. I mean, if you have a hip replacement, you could be in intense pain, you need these types of drugs, but it obviously requires closer monitoring, not just from the doctors, but from those around you, your loved ones, to make sure that you don't go down this slippery slope.
No question, and I also think that, unfortunately, a lot of these drugs are prescribed without even any discussion. You go for a minor dental procedure, you go in for an outpatient procedure, you walk out with the bill from your doctor or your provider and a script for Percocet or Vicodin or OxyContin, whether you need it, whether you want it or not. And for folks who are at risk of addiction, that's it's like putting a loaded weapon into someone's hands.
Well, let's hope this legislation goes through or something is done. We also want to talk about the Obamacare rate increase. Several health insurance companies are set to hike those rates up big time. Some doubling, right?
That's well, what we're hearing, it's been kind of a difficult.
scaring me,
It is. It's
Nick.
been a difficult couple of weeks for Obamacare. We saw United
Yeah.
Healthcare pull out of the Obamacare exchanges, the nation's largest insurer. The Congressional Budget Office is now estimating that about 8 million fewer Americans are going to be enrolling for Obamacare because the costs are so high. But this latest point is Marilyn Tavenner, who oversaw the rollout of healthcare.gov for the Obama administration, is now a CEO for a lobbying group for insurers, is saying we're going to be looking at double-digit premium increases in 2017, and in some states they're going to be very high. Virginia, a rural state,
Right.
where costs tend to be high for delivering services, the 9 insurers there have proposed rate hikes that range up to 37% next year. If they don't get it and they get half of it, it's still going to be a huge number.
And what about the subsidies that all of us help pay for through our taxes? How are we going to be impacted by that?
Well, the White House has said we need to keep these subsidies in mind because they're helping people pay for it, but they're taking money out of taxpayers' pockets as well. And even the subsidies, they do knock down some of those costs for low or middle income people. You're still looking at increases of thousands of dollars or more a year in premiums. On top of high deductibles that many companies are rolling out, on top of drug costs that are through the roof. I mean, co-pays used to be $10 and $15.
Yeah.
Now they're 40,
60
50, 60.
for specialists,
and that's if
right.
you get somebody in network. So we're going to be paying more, and that's going to be the case for years to come.
Going to be a
I fear.
big election year issue. I hope Republicans have that alternative to Obamacare.
Well, it's certainly going to light a
Tito.
fire under a lot of folks, particularly those running for president, about what they're going to do about it.